Welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Bears Brothers podcast, and welcome to our game preview episode as we're going to explain what our Bears must do on both sides of the ball to come away with their third straight win, which will be for the first time since the early portions of that 2014 season. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But that said, this is a huge game for the Bears to find a way to get to 500 before the bye week. We're going to talk about how it can happen. Hopefully it does, but we're going to talk about what the Bears must do to make it happen. I'm your host, Will DeWitt, joined by my fellow Bears brother, Brandon Hazlett. Nick, he's taking an extended weekend, so it's going to just be Brandon and I for the rest of the week. This is some throwback Bears Brothers talk. If you've been a fan for the show since the beginning, started off with Brandon and I, so it feels like some old school stuff, which, it's not too bad. I mean, I'll miss Nick, but again, it's nice to, just be Brandon and I. So, Brandon, see, I'm even off. See what happens? Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm already excited for Sunday. This game is huge.
Yeah, this game is on my mind, hence why I called you the wrong co-host, but I know you're Brandon, so that's okay. Maybe for Halloween you can go for Nick, and we can definitely make this up. But as you know, or as you should know, our goal is to make you the most informed Bears fan on game day, and this is the perfect episode to listen to as we're going to give you an in-depth look and go through the ins and outs of both sides of the ball, showing you what the Bears must do to win. And let's start, usually we start these shows with the Bears defense, and I want to shake things up this week. So let's just start with this Bears offense, shall we, Brandon?
I think there's a good reason to.
I think so too. And that reason is the most timely of topics are on the Bears' offensive side of the ball, and that's the newly acquired wideout, Dentrell Inman. We got him in a trade yesterday with the Chargers for only a seventh-round pick. And even though he's been fairly quiet this year, you need to only look at his numbers a year ago to understand why Ryan Pace decided to bring him in. He had 58 catches for 810 yards and 4 touchdowns, which, by the way, if you don't know, stats by heart, that's nearly identical what a Bear who is currently on IR had a year ago, Cameron Meredith, who we've been unable to replace ever since he went down in the preseason. So hopefully Inman is the guy. Brandon, I like this trade. I'll explain why in a moment, but I just want you to go ahead and chime in here. What are your thoughts?
First of all, I've seen the same exact thing when I looked at his stats last year. I was like, that's kind of similar to a guy we all know. And he even looks like a guy we all know, Cam Meredith. He's 6'3", 205. Cam Meredith, I think, is 6'3", 207 or something like that. So it's like he's going to be out there on the field anyway, except it's not actually Cameron Meredith, unfortunately. But statistically, like you said, he's not a guy that blows you away in his 4 years in the league. His 2 down years that kind of bring down his averages are 2014 when he played in 7 games. He had 12 receptions for 158 yards, and this year he's played 4 games and only has 2 receptions for 9 yards. But like you said, his welcome to the league party was last year with 58 receptions for 810 yards and 4 touchdowns. And I like this trade for a couple of reasons. One, because it helps right now. It helps the weak or lack thereof receiving core that Trubisky has to throw to, and it adds some height. And then second one, this is kind of like a prove-it year, kind of like what we've been saying when Ryan Pace signs these 1-year contracts, because after this year, he's an unrestricted free agent. So if he can prove it, and Ryan Pace ends up signing this guy next year, it's like there's 2 Cam Merediths on the outside, and that would be really nice to see. They're not flashy guys, but they're going to be reliable, and they're going to be able to get the job done type of players.
Of course. And obviously that's not going to be it when Ryan Pace is trying to revamp this receiving core. Kevin White, we still don't know what's going to happen in his future. I feel like we do know what's happening, but no one wants to admit it. But for me, with Inman, if you watch his tape, I think he's a very solid receiver. He was, at least for the Chargers a year ago. He has good size, good speed, good hands, and the ability to make plays after the catch. I'm really excited to have him here. For those wondering, why has his production dropped off so much this season compared to last one? Well, it's pretty simple. Ingram, he had Ingram. What did I say? Inman. Inman. So many eyes. It's just one of those things today. But Inman, he had off-season surgery for a hernia. He was a little bit behind the 8 ball come training camp. Then Keenan Allen, he comes back with an injury. Guys like Tyrell Williams and Travis Benjamin, they're playing well. And of course, they drafted a guy known as Mike Williams in the first round. So, Inman was pretty much the odd man out there in a very crowded receiving core there in LA for the Chargers. So now he's in Chicago, which, as we know, is a very weak group. I think this is one where he can step in and excel and to kind of perform like we saw a year ago and really contribute to this offense. I think it's a good trade. And I know in August they're shopping him as well, and they're looking for a 4th-round pick. And we got him for a 7th. So I think this is a great value by Ryan Pace. And honestly, I can't wait to see what Inman can do. But looking at this week versus the Saints, Brandon, do you really expect anything out of him right away? He's talked about how he's pretty much ran every offense. It won't take him that long to get acclimated, but I think it's still a tall task to ask him to go out there and produce right away this Sunday.
I agree. That would be very impressive if he went out and put up the kind of numbers that he did last year on a regular basis on a short week for him with the Bears already. But if he does, I certainly won't complain.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. I honestly maybe anticipate him being out there for a handful of snaps just to kind of get his feet wet a little bit. But then after this is a good timing because the Bears do have a bye week, and then he has a full week to kind of get used to the playbook, get used to Trubisky a little bit. And I think after the bye for the second half of the season, when the Bears are going up against lesser caliber defenses as well, it's going to be where you're going to see Inman kind of step up. And again, like Brandon, you just said, he has a half a season to prove it and maybe earn himself a multi-year contract here in Chicago. And for all of our sakes, we just hope the best for this guy, and hopefully he can come out here, make an impact, because we really need it here in Chicago to open up this offense and just add an extra element that we just not have had all season long. But yeah, I don't anticipate much of anything. Any final thoughts on this trade before we move on?
I think it's very smart, just not just for this year, but just for the future as well.
Yeah, I agree. I hope he makes the most of this opportunity. I really do. But let's move on, Brandon. Let's talk about some more game-specific topics. And Nick and I, we talked about this with our guest, Brian, on Tuesday. But the Saints, they tend to give up big chunks on the ground. They're currently ranked 31st in the NFL on defense in terms of rushing, giving up 4.9 yards per carry and 114.2 yards per game on the ground. Chicago, they entered the week in the middle of the road, 4.2 yards per carry, but they're in the top 10 with 126 yards per game on the ground per average. And Jordan Howard, we've talked about this, of course, throughout our episodes, but he does have 20-plus touches in the past 2 weeks, and the Bears have won both of those contests, moving the Bears to 6-1 whenever he gets 20-plus touches. And things may end up being a little bit different this week, as the Saints can put up points in bunches, which obviously is going to maybe limit what the Bears can do on the ground. Maybe they won't be able to stick to the run game as much as they like. But that said, the Saints have been ran on about 24 times per game on average. So, Brandon, what do you expect from this Bears rushing attack against this Saints defense?
Well, the Saints can't score in bunches, like you said, if they don't have the ball. And you gave the statistics. They gave up 4.9 yards per carry, 114.2 per game. So that just plays right into the Bears' strengths. Eat the clock, keep that Saints offense on the sideline. And then that kind of also puts the dome to sleep, because we know we've seen how loud that dome can get. I guess we haven't seen it in a while. But it's kind of a loud place that it's known for. So really the offense can really just be a big compliment to the defense in this game if they can keep that Saints offense off the field. And I think this is another game where Jordan Howard gets his 20 or more carries in the game. Expect Tariq Cohen to have a couple 20 or more rushes in this game, especially if the Saints struggle to tackle in the rushing game, like you say, and the statistics show. So I don't anticipate him getting very many carries, but this is a game where his explosiveness can really show. And I think this mismatch with the running game just plays right into the Bears' hands as far as the game planning goes.
Right. We're talking to Brian the other day, and he was talking about how he's actually not worried about Jordan Howard or really Tariq Cohen because of the Saints defense doing an okay job against the run. They just tend to give up those big plays. But I feel like Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, especially last week, they weren't able to bust out any big gains on the ground. Cohen had the big one through the air coming out of the slot. But I feel like they're just due, both of them, for some big-time rushes. I know Jordan Howard, he loves running to that left sideline. I anticipate the Bears to go that way. That's away from Cameron Jordan, who's been just an absolute beast this season. So for me, I anticipate a decent game for the Bears on the ground. Of course, that all does depend on game flow and how well that Chicago defense can keep this game as low scoring as possible. But really, when you look at the Saints offense, the best thing the Bears can do is just keep them off the field. And to do it, they just need to keep rushing the ball. I anticipate Jordan Howard to be effective and get around over 4 or so yards per carry. And to Tariq Cohen, I know they've kind of shied away from utilizing him out of the backfield these past 2 weeks. But I think this is a game where they kind of get him acclimated again, because defenses haven't seen it in a few weeks, and it's time to go out there and give it another try, especially along those outside edges. Have his speed beat the guys on the edge. I know Cameron Jordan and Alex Okafor has done a great job of setting the edge and containing this season, but I just feel like Tariq Cohen's elite speed might be enough to help him, make some decent plays, impact chunks on the ground. But that said, anything else you have on this Bears rushing game? How do you feel about maybe the matchup in the trenches with this offensive line versus the Saints defensive line?
Well, first of all, I just want to touch on that you brought up how or maybe it was the guest that brought up he wasn't worried because the Bears didn't do much on the ground last week. But these are two totally different rush defenses. Carolina, I think, was a top 5 rush defense, and they still are after that performance. I think they'll need Jordan Howard to 65 yards. And this is a rushing attack or rushing defense that is definitely bottom half of the league. So I definitely think this plays into the Bears' hands a little bit more than I think he will. But as far as strengths go, Cameron Jordan is really going to be the one big matchup that I'm looking for, because if he gets going as far as getting tackles in the backfield, getting him going, that's going to be tough to stop once you get in a groove. So I think our running backs have to be able to know where he's at on the field and make your cuts before we get there on those stretch plays. Because if we're going to take him all the way out to the sideline, we got to make that cut before we get there.
Exactly. And, if this running game can get going and kind of, make some decent chunks on first or second down, which last week they had a really hard time of doing that, it's really going to help the Bears on third down, which, again, I harp on it every single week. But I think this game may be one of the most important ones of them all for Chicago. They must really improve that third down defense, because it's just been, for lack of a better word, putrid. I mean, what they gotten lucky these past 2 weeks with the defense really helping them out. But this week, the Bears must find ways to sustain drives, because currently the Bears are 28th in the NFL on third down. At one point, they're in the top half. Now they're all the way down to 28, which obviously is not where you want this offense to be at all. Right now they're averaging 34% converting on third down. But over the past 3 weeks, that average drops down to 25%. And then last week, that average drops again to only 18%, which is probably one third down conversion for the entire game, which, as we know, is not what we want to see here for this Bears offense. But the good news is, and I do bring you some good news here, New Orleans, the defense does struggle on third down. Their defense, too, just like the Bears are 28th on offense and third down, that defense is 28th on defense on third down. They give up 47% of those third down conversions. And obviously, I'm using good news a little bit as a loose term here, because the Saints have gotten better as the season moves along on third down. And over the last 3 games, that average drops down to only 37%. So, Brandon, I know I ask you every week, but what can Chicago do to sustain some drives?
I think in this game, it's really going to come down to playing smart and fundamentally, because you just look at the statistics for New Orleans throughout the year. They have 8 interceptions. So, Trubisky, don't force anything, but also don't be afraid to throw it away, because the Saints are also tied for first in the league with 9 forced fumbles, and Cameron Jordan has 2 of them. So don't be afraid to throw the ball away, because if he's going to get you from behind, that's an issue. He's going to go for the ball. But the weird thing is that the Saints give up 351 yards per game, and they give up 22.2 points a game, which is like middle of the road as far as NFL rankings at 16th. So I think as long as the Bears protect the football, I think this offense is going to be okay. I don't anticipate the offense being relied on heavily, but if they can protect the ball and not get too many false starts, because that dome's loud, you got to know what your silent snap count's going to be. And being able to sustain drives longer than 4 minutes, I think that this Bears offense is going to do enough to get the job done.
I mean, I really hope so, because if you look at last week, the longest drive for these Chicago Bears, which, again, I talked about it on the game recap show, the post-game show, that obviously the defense giving them that early cushion definitely changed what they're going to do schematically, but their longest drive still for that entire game was 4 minutes. And honestly, that can't happen again. If the longest drive for the Bears are only 4 minutes against the Saints, unless somehow this defense replicates that performance, what we saw last week against Carolina, the Bears are really going to find it's going to be really hard for the Bears to find a way to come out and win. So they must really take the air out of the football and keep that Saints offense off the field and sustain some drives, which, of course, a big key in doing so is passing the ball effectively. So, Brandon, if you're looking at these Bears receivers, I know we've already talked about, Inman a little bit, but we don't anticipate too much from him. So you got Trey McBride, you got Kendall Wright, Zach Miller, and also perhaps Tanner Gentry. Who do you maybe key in on here to maybe have a bigger game?
I hope it's Zach Miller. He's proven to be a security blanket. I said this a couple weeks ago. He's proven to be a security blanket for multiple quarterbacks we've had here in Chicago since he's been here. So I hope it continues to be Zach Miller. He led the team with receptions last week. But what I want to see more out of, and I don't even care what receiver this is, but when Trubisky, I talked about this in our game recap, when he hit the Tariq Cohen with that 70-yard pass, like the route tree enabled Tariq Cohen to be open in the middle of the field. I want to see some more of that strategic route running going on. And that will open up the game, I think, for Trubisky a lot more.
Yeah, and on top of that, you brought up Zach Miller. I think he's the exact guy who I was thinking as well, because when you watch the tape from the last week, there are a few times when Zach Miller was open, but Trubisky decided to just to tuck the ball and take the sack. And, I mean, again, I don't think that's going to be the wisest decision. He has to take some chances downfield, and Zach Miller, especially as a security blanket underneath type of routes, he's been open, and I think he needs to hit him and let Zach make some plays after the catch. But on top of that, another tight end, Deion Sims, I think this is a week where he needs to show up in the stat sheet again through the air. And maybe Adam Shaheen, I'm not holding my breath on him, but of course, the more players we can get acclimated, spread the ball around, because we need to. We don't have a guy who can go out there and dominate. We need to spread this ball around. And of course, everybody needs to get involved. So maybe Adam Shaheen as well. But honestly, when you look at these two Saints corners, I just don't see any way where these Bears wide receivers on the outside, either it be Trey McBride, Inman, or Tanner Gentry, can really do too much of anything. But that said, you talked about Cameron Jordan, and protecting Trubisky and giving him time to throw is going to go a long way to help the Bears, of course, mount some drives. And the one guy who does frighten me is Cameron Jordan, because he has 4 sacks and 4 tackles for loss in these Saints 4 straight wins. So, Brandon, can the Bears slow him down? And if so, how can they do it? And is there anybody else on that front 7 for New Orleans that maybe worries you a little bit?
Well, I think I don't know how many times we said his name so far before this, but he's definitely going to be the focal point of that defense, like the whole defensive line, just the defense in general. It all starts there with him, I think. So first of all, being able to know where he's at, which end he's on, is going to be huge. Make sure that he is accounted for on pass plays. Keep a running back there just in case, then have him kind of go out in a flat for an emergency check down pass. Or you have tight ends, chip block on him, whatever side that he's going to be on. Force him to go inside on the line. Don't let him get out around our tackles. And then run plays, like I said, it's very important for Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen, if Cohen gets any carries, to know exactly where he's at. Because if you run into where he's going to go, he more than likely will come up with the tackle. As you said already, he has 4 for a loss on the year. So if you see a lane before he gets to his assignment, hit it.
Right.
I think the running backs are going to be very beneficial. I don't want to say you want to avoid him the whole game, but take the lane before Cameron Jordan gets there.
Yeah, honestly, he's been playing, like watched a little bit of his highlights, his tape. He is playing at an elite level this season, becoming a player that everyone thought that he could be, and he's been doing a great job setting the contain, and that's why you said you can't really avoid him all too much. But if you see a lane open before you get to his containment, you better go get it, because he's not going to really let you go around by him. But you brought up, in terms of pass protection, perhaps having a running back there that, to help out, and also chipping with some tight ends. But I saw a tweet, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but they're showing like what offensive tackles get the least amount of help. And both Charles Leno Jr. and Bobby Massey were up in that list, in the top half of that list, which is interesting. But don't you agree that this is a game where they really do need the help with Cameron Jordan especially?
Yeah, I would. At least for their sake, I would appreciate getting some help there.
No kidding. All right, so this is odd. The last 2 weeks, have been the weirdest in terms of this Bears offensive performance, right? I mean, they've pretty much gone to strictly a running offense, which, it's been working, but I don't think it's a long-term solution for these Bears to go out there and continue to win. They've just been doubling down on that run. So I'm really trying to decide where I want to take this conversation, because I can't think of too much more to discuss on this offense, because they haven't really gotten to the red zone much. They aren't really doing too well on 3rd down. It's just been run. I mean, that's really about it. So let's just do something different here today, especially because Nick's not here. So let's just discuss maybe a potential X factor for the offense this week, a player who maybe the success of the offense hinges on more than his teammates. And I'll let you go ahead and go first. Who's your X factor?
I'm going to say Cody Whitehair, because he struggled with snaps this season, and I'm sure Will can point out exactly where at. But last week, I didn't see him struggling so much. So in a loud dome. What's that?
It's because he was on the ticket. It was Cody Whitehair Day. He couldn't mess up.
That's very true. But in a loud dome, he's got to know what the silent snap count is. He's got to know where all of his guys are, make sure they're ready, and get the ball to Trubisky fluidly, or the offense is going to have a hard time even getting the plays going. So I think it's very imperative for him to have another strong week under center, or at center.
Yeah, I don't think he's under himself.
He's not under center, no.
All right, so for me, my X factor is going to be Tariq Cohen. Last week, he tied for the team high in targets with 3, which, by the way, that's a pretty sad stat when you think about it.
Yeah.
But I really do think the Bears can utilize him in space this week, especially in the passing game. We saw it last week at that 70-yarder, and he also ran a really nice wheel route along the sideline against Carolina, but the throw was just a little bit late. He wasn't able to call it in bounds, and I think that the offense production is going to be heavily reliant on his. And if he struggles to make an impact in any way, shape, or form, either it be on the ground or through the air, I think this Bears offense is also going to struggle this week. But if Tariq Cohen can get going, and like spark this unit, spark this offense, and put the attention on him, I think that's going to just open up other Bears to go out there and make some plays too. So I really hope that Tariq Cohen has a big game. I really think that he's going to be an X factor. And of course, let's be honest, like I said, I don't really expect guys like Trey McBride, Tanner Gentry to do much against, Ken Crowley and, of course, the rookie Marshawn Lattimore. Brandon, when you look at those matchups on the outside, do you have any chance of hope?
Maybe a little glimmer, but they got to show me something before I can give them an advantage there.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there, especially because Marshawn Lattimore, he's been playing really well, especially for a rookie corner. But that's really all I have about this Bears offense, Saints defense. But how about you, Brandon? Anything else that we should mention?
I just really think it's going to be another week of running the ball, especially with the Saints ranking 31st as far as rushing yards per game given up. I just anticipate them running the ball a little more and putting that dome to sleep, and hopefully it helps the offense and the defense out some.
Right. Okay. So how about this? One last question then. Say the Bears will go out there and they double down on the run yet again, but they're averaging less than 3 yards per carry. What happens?
Boy, I hope they plan for that.
No kidding.
Because it's something I would want to put in the game plan. If this isn't working, how long do you ride that train? And then it just comes a matter of how much do you trust the new receiver Dontrell Inman? How much do you trust Trey McBride and Tanner Gentry to get open? How much do you trust Mitch Trubisky? Because I think he's a little timid to make a mistake right now, which, he shouldn't be because he's a rookie. But at the same time, I think he's seen kind of how we criticize quarterbacks who make mistakes here. We're not exactly the most subtle about it.
No,
I would say as a fan base as a whole. So I think he's a little nervous too, but at the same time, it'd be good for him to take those shots. So I would like to see them do it if the run game cannot take off.
Yeah, for me, I think maybe a second X factor for me, if I can just sneak another one in, might be Kendall Wright. I know Kenny Vaccaro for the Saints, he does have 3 interceptions, but when you watch it, the Saints do like to run a lot of zone, especially with blitzes, and I think Kendall Wright lined up in the slot can definitely find some cushions within that zone and make some catches, and I really think, of course, he's the Bears' best receiver right now on the roster, especially one that knows the playbook, so hopefully they can kind of, get Kendall Wright going a little bit because he just needs to be on the field more. He needs to be out there being involved in this offense. I know yesterday Dal Logan said that they believe in Kendall Wright's ability, and it talks about how sometimes the game plan doesn't go his way. I hope that if the Bears need to pass, they can definitely find a way to get him acclimated in this offense because he's huge.
I just wouldn't want to force it there though if it's not there. Like don't force him to be the focal part of the game plan because then that just makes you one-dimensional with receivers. If Trey McBride and Tanner Gentry have yet to show us anything either.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. Again, you don't want to force it, but hopefully someone gets open. Someone's making some plays because hopefully. We need it. And it's really weird that we're here. It's almost a bye week. And usually, last year it was Cameron Meredith, Zach Miller. Those were the guys to go to. We don't have anybody to really say. Tariq Cohen, yes, but how much can you really rely on Tariq Cohen to be your only weapon in terms of the passing game? It's just not sustainable. But that said, Brandon, it's time to figure out who has the edge. And you're the trenches guy, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the Bears offensive line versus that Saints pass rush led by Cameron Jordan.
I'm going to give it to the Bears offensive line in this one. I think, Trubisky's taken some sacks, but not all of them are on the offensive line. He's got to learn to be able to get the ball out a little bit quicker from time to time. He takes some bad sacks, and he acknowledges that. So I'm going to give it to the Bears offensive line in this one because I think they'll be able to dominate in the rushing game as well.
All right. Well, that's good. You pretty much helped me out. I had the Bears rushing attack versus the Saints run defense. And obviously, I'm going to give this one to the Bears. I really expect Tariq Cohen, Jordan Howard to be that thunder and lightning that we expect them to be. Go out there, kill some clock, get some extra chunks. I'm ready for another Jordan Howard big run. We didn't see it last week. I just feel like he's due for one, and I anticipate him finding a way to get it done this week against the Saints. And, of course, whenever you get Jordan Howard going, it's a real hard time to stop him. And if he gets 20-plus carries, the Bears are 6-1, and the Saints are getting ran on over 20 times per game. So all those stats point in the Bears' favor. So for me, the Bears have the edge here, which leaves, Brandon, for you, the Bears' passing attack versus the Saints secondary.
Does this include everybody?
This has to include
running
everybody.
backs, tight ends, receivers. Yeah, I'm still giving it to the Saints secondary. Like we were saying, got to see it to believe it. Last year we were talking about Cam Meredith and Zach Miller, and this year, even today, you could just take, for example, we spent most of our time talking about the Bears rushing game just because the passing attack just has been pretty much non-existent to this point.
Yeah, and it's fell apart as the season gone along too, which is weird, but it's the situation we've been given. I think the Bears know running the ball is their strength, and they're just going to stick with it, which, they say tailor to your strengths, and they're listening to that advice quite well.
Yes, they are.
But that's it for this Bears offensive discussion. Before we turn the tables and preview Chicago's defense, a unit that is really coming to their own these past couple weeks, we need to take a brief halftime and tell you about our show sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. As you know, we all have the SeatGeek app on our phones, and it's by far the easiest way we've been able to shop for tickets. We can be anywhere in just a few taps until we find some seats. I actually just used SeatGeek to look at some tickets for this week's Bears game in New Orleans, and there are plenty of amazing deals left. Actually, there's still tickets for like $60. So if you're in the area and you want to go see these Bears play, it's pretty budget friendly. But again, you're going to be in some unfriendly confines. But I just want to let you know that if you're thinking about it, if you live down in that area, there's definitely some good deals left for you. SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. And to get you the most bang for your buck, SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. And the best part of all of this is that our listeners get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code BEARS today. That's promo code BEARS, BEARS, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Alrighty, well, I'm Will DeWitt, joined by my fellow Bears brother, Brandon Hazlett. You're listening to the Bears Brothers podcast, and we are now setting our sights on Chicago's defense. And let me say, it's just been one hell of a sight to watch these past 2 weeks. And let's start by talking about this Saints rushing attack. It's split between Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. Our guest on Tuesday, he told us to watch out for Kamara, and I can see why. The dude is averaging 6.3 yards per carry, and both backs are heavily featured in the passing game as well. Kamara is the team's second leading receiver with a team high, with 28 catches, 209 yards, averaging over 7 yards per catch. And then Ingram is the third leading receiver on this team with 24 catches and 166 yards. But Chicago's rush defense has just been stout over these past 2 weeks. Everybody up front is pitching in, from Akeem Hicks to Mitch Unrein and Jonathan Bullard, which is making the linebackers' jobs that much easier. Not many guards have been able to reach the second level, having to deal with the Bears, front defensive line. And I think how these Bears handle these 2 running backs is just going to be a pivotal part of this game, especially because New Orleans is like to try to set the tone early on the ground and then open up their passing game. So, Brandon, how do you expect this defense to fare against Ingram and Kamara, and why?
Well, first of all, this is a top 10 rushing offense. They're 10th in the league, averaging 121.7 yards per game. And something that kind of worried me going into the Carolina game, a little trend that I noticed since the Week 5 matchup against the Vikings, the Bears have allowed 116 rushing yards per game. That does include the Carolina game, which they only allowed 108. So it wasn't like all that bad, and Cam Newton had a majority of those yards. But I think there does need to be a re-emphasis on stopping the run, especially in this game with a top 10 rushing offense. And while the Bears, haven't let the rushing statistic dominate the game, I think it's something that they could stand to be a little bit tougher against with a big matchup at a pivotal point in the season, I think, in this one. But I'm not worried too much about it. The front three, regardless what combination they have out there, they've shown their playmaking abilities in this 2-game win streak. And I think with Kwiatkowski coming back this week, I don't think we see very many runs getting past that second level either.
Yeah, I really anticipate this Bears defense, especially against a run, to really step up this week. And, there's a matchup I really like on the inside. It's going to be Akeem Hicks versus a backup right guard. His name's Senio Clemente. And I looked at Clemente. He's played all 5 positions for the Saints up front. He's someone who's been asked to go.
He's like Cody Whiter.
Exactly, which we know how much that can affect a player's rhythm, his stance, just how effective he can be. And I think this is a matchup, Akeem Hicks going up against his former team, playing with, Akeem Hicks is, has a high motor as it is. I can't imagine. I can't wait to see what's going to be like on Sunday going up against a team where he wants to kind of like prove it to him a little bit. Someone who he's obviously has a little bit of saltiness against. And I really think that Akeem Hicks and guys like even Eddie Goldman can really step up this week and help out this Bears rushing defense. And on top of that, I've been really liking what I'm seeing out of the Bears corners like Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan, heck, even sometimes Prince Amukamara stepping into the box and making some plays in the running game as well. And we got Adrian Amos, Eddie Jackson. I feel like this Bears defense is just really coming together.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels good. Like, wow, I feel confident in everybody's ability. And on top of that, I think the most important player, though, out of all this, Danny Trevathan. I mean, we've talked about it for a few weeks now, but he's the one getting everybody on the same page. He's the one leading the charge by his play, his hustle, his determination. And on top of that, Trevathan's been great at reading plays, getting to the hole, attacking downhill. And I really do anticipate that coming. And especially in the passing game with these two running backs who are heavily featured, Danny Trevathan is going to have to go up against them. And Trevathan is by far our best coverage linebacker. And I don't really have much fear that he's going to be able to, even if those guys get catches, I think he's going to, make the tackle in front of them, ensure they don't get many yards after the catch, and just keep those gains as minimal as possible. Brandon, go ahead.
I was going to say ahead to that. If Kwiatkowski comes back and plays a significant amount of time, and they play both Ingram and Kamara, I have just total confidence in both those linebackers to go out in space and cover these guys. I think both Trevathan and Kwiatkowski are athletic enough to be able to cover that task.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate. Christian Jones, say he plays and they wait. Kwiatkowski will be active, but say they want to try to wait for after the bye to really get him fully acclimated, kind of play it cautious, which I think they could if they really wanted to. But say he does sit out and Christian Jones starts and plays the majority of the snaps. How much does that worry you? Because Christian Jones last week I thought played pretty well.
Yeah, I thought he did too. And like I said, when we had Adam Johns on it, I'm not too concerned about when they put Kwiatkowski in because Christian Jones led the team with 11 tackles last week. So I have full confidence even in Christian Jones. Like he's grown so much as a player, I don't feel bad if Christian Jones gets the majority of the snaps on defense for the middle linebackers here.
Right. Yeah, he's a little slower, which might, if he's going up against Kamara, might be the issue. But against Ingram, right. I do think he can get the job done. But let's take another turn here and let's look at the Saints passing attack. And it's really what you expect from a Drew Brees-led offense. The ageless quarterback, he is completing 70% of his passes for nearly about 1,700 yards so far this season with 11 touchdowns. He's only been intercepted 4 times, and oddly enough, all 4 of those have came in the past 2 weeks. He's had 2 in each game, but both of them, of course, were wins. Also, Brees has not had a passer rating of 100 since that team's Week 5 bye, and he did 4 times before it. So even though the Saints rushing attack is kind of revving up, it seems like the passing attack has taken a slight dip. I'm just saying slight because it's still been pretty effective. So, Brandon, how do you really expect the Bears to limit Brees and company this week, and do you think they can?
Can they? Yes, but how much may be another story because Drew Brees has this great, unbelievable, I'll say, ability to just find his open guys downfield. And even dating back to his Purdue days with the Holy Toledo Seth Morales catch against Ohio State. I had to throw a Purdue plug in there. Huh? Yeah, I did. Cradle of quarterbacks. Come on, got to brag about it a little bit.
Okay.
But even like just starting then and just seeing throughout his whole NFL career, he just has this unbelievable ability to find his guys downfield. And he's not a top quarterback in league history for no reason. He's 7th all time in passing touchdowns, 295, 10th most in passing yards with 42,462 yards. So he definitely knows what he's doing back there. But the secondary, Kyle Fuller, Prince Amukamara, 2 safeties, Eddie Jackson, Adrian Amos, like they've got to be pretty tight on their guys. And I think this is where if Prince Amukamara can do that cool thing where he sticks his fist in the guy's breadbasket to punch the ball straight up in the air, that's definitely going to make a huge impact because it's not necessarily going to be Drew's fault. But like you said, he has thrown 4 interceptions this year, so it is possible for him to make a mistake. It's just really up to the corners to be able to go and make the play on him, be able to force those interceptions, those balls up in the air, because the secondary has done a fantastic job with these tip drills the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they really have. When you look at like guys like Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn Jr., who do you worry about most? Those two combined, they have 13 catches that have gone for 20 plus. They average about 130 yards per game combined as well through the air. So obviously, these two are the 2 main people that the Bears must pay attention to on the outside. But other guys like Brandon Coleman, Colby Fleener, the tight end, they don't really worry me so much. For me, all my focus is going to be on Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn Jr. But out of those two, which one worries you the most?
I would say Michael Thomas because he leads the team with receptions, so it's obviously Drew's favorite target. And I think if either Amukamara or Kyle Fuller can get under his skin early, I think that may be beneficial. It may take some focus off, and he's just trying to beat the corner in like a personal battle, not necessarily just to go get the ball for Drew. But Ted Ginn Jr., he's a speedster. He's just always had this great speed that I've always would like to see him here in Chicago, but now in his older age, it'd be okay if he didn't come. But I don't know. He's just a little quicker. Just another guy that I would worry about as a deep threat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, what worries me about Ted Ginn Jr. is he is catching the majority of the targets that have come his way. Like, okay,
Right.
Michael Thomas, he is heavily targeted. He leads the team with 53 targets, but he only has 35 catches. But then Ted Ginn Jr., he only has 27 targets, which is fourth on the team, but he's caught 22 of those balls. So when the
Right.
ball's going his way, he's open, he's making plays. And it goes with that speed. And when I think about the Bears corners, Prince Amukamara and Kyle Fuller, honestly, it's so weird saying this because for the past 2 years on the show, even early on this season, it was like, oh boy, here we go. How are we going to slow down these guys? I'm confident in Kyle Fuller and, of course, Prince Amukamara to stop both Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn Jr. No, they're not going to shut them down completely, but I don't anticipate many huge gains. I know like the longest for Ted Ginn Jr. is 47 yards. I don't think we're going to see the Bears give up a 47-yarder, especially with these two safeties over the top. I think that the Bears have the defensive tools needed to limit them to a respectable amount of yards and touches, and hopefully that's just enough for this Bears offense to put them in position to score just enough points to win. Because even though the Saints are, the fourth highest scoring offense in the NFL, I don't anticipate them reaching that total here on Sunday because of the Bears' defense is just pointing so high up in the right direction. And honestly, this is the test for this defense. If the Bears defense can go out there, shut down these guys, the confidence level heading into the bye week is sky high. The schedule gets so much easier. And the Bears, even if somehow, even the Bears lose, but this game is close, I think the confidence level remains high for this team. And I think some interesting things can happen down the stretch. But again, Michael Thomas, Ted Ginn Jr. are the two guys on the outside that I'm going to primarily focus on. But Kyle Fuller, Prince Amukamara, heck, even, Marcus Cooper, it's been a while since we've seen him, besides a couple plays last week. Even if we see him out there, I'm not too worried. I think the Bears have a great group of corners, and even Bryce Callahan in the slot, if he has to go up against some of these backs, however they want to play it, I anticipate Callahan to, hold his own as well. So this, to me, is a pretty decent matchup for the Bears against the Saints passing game. And again, huge test to see exactly where this defense stands. Any final thoughts on this passing game before I move on?
I did notice today that Bryce Callahan was on the injury report. He was just limited in practice yesterday with a neck thing. So maybe we see a little bit of Crevon LeBlanc. I don't anticipate it, but just something maybe to keep an eye on.
Sure. Exactly. Haven't seen Crevon at all really besides special teams. So interesting. He was someone who we all thought might have a job at the nickel corner and even split reps, but Bryce Callahan has locked down that position. Yep. No complaining with that at all. Nope. But let's switch over and let's talk about the Bears pass rush. The Saints have only given up 5 sacks for the entire year, and they have never had more than one given up in a game. So, Brandon, do you think the Bears can be that first team to take down Drew Brees multiple times in a game this season?
Well, like I said earlier, Drew Brees isn't that good for no reason. He's had some offensive line help, especially this year. It's pretty stout to say the least, but I think Akeem Hicks gets a couple. I seen on Twitter today. I wish I could give credit to the source, but I don't remember who it was, but they were saying that he's still fired up that he was traded out in New Orleans. So I think he comes ready to ball. I think he gets to Drew Brees a couple times. I think Leonard Floyd like to add like an all-time quarterback to his sack list. So I think he comes out hungry as well. And this Bears pass rush is talented. We know that. They're 6th in the league in sacks, and like talent's there, regardless what combination of the 3 are there. We've seen some A-gap blitzes. I think they're going to be able to get to Drew Brees, whether or not I wish I could put a number to how many times, but I think it will be more than one in this game.
Yeah, that's all I asked for. It's hard to give a number, especially when they only give up less than one per game. And I also like the subtle jab to Aaron Rodgers there. Leonard Floyd adding an all-time quarterback to his list because he has sacked Rodgers. But I'll take it. I like it a lot. I just caught it, so I want to make sure other people did as well. But for me, I think I am right along with you, Akeem Hicks. I think it's going to be imperative for him, as well as Eddie Goldman, to get some interior pressure in the pocket because historically, Drew Brees, he tends to struggle when defenders are in his face. Remember, he is a very short quarterback, and he has a hard time seeing the field when the pocket in front of him starts to collapse. Hicks, like I said, he's going to be lined up against a backup right guard in Clemente. And then because that's Larry Warford, he's out with an ab injury. And Goldman, he's going up against the center, Matt Unger, who he's been dealing with some foot problems this season. He hasn't been playing up to his normal potential. So I think Chicago does have a good chance to be disruptive against Drew Brees, disrupt that rhythm, and maybe even take him down for a few sacks. It's hard to really, again, like you said, pin down a number when they haven't given up more than one per game. But this Bears defense, how that pass rush has kind of caught on as of late. Guys like maybe even Pernell McPhee can go out there and make some impact. So we'll see exactly what Vic Fangio dials up, but this is a good matchup. Drew Brees, Sean Payton versus Vic Fangio and his defense. I can't wait to see it. It's going to be a lot of fun. But let's move down into the constricted area of the field. And I do fear it. No. But New Orleans, they entered the game in the top 10 in the red zone with scoring, which, again, is really no surprise for any Drew Brees-led offense. They scored touchdowns 57% of those red zone trips, and they have a plethora of weapons down in that constricted field. As of right now, 6 different, I'm calling them wideouts, but technically targets. They have caught a touchdown pass in the red zone this season. I'd personally watch out for Michael Thomas. He's 6'3", and he has 2 red zone touchdowns, which is his 2 touchdowns on the year. Both of them came in the red zone. And again, just like in terms of the normal game plan in general, I do feel like Amukamara and Kyle Fuller can handle down him, especially in one-on-one situations, which is huge because that's going to allow the safeties to kind of focus on the tight ends coming out on routes, even these running backs coming out of the backfield as well. So for these 2 corners to be locked down against guys like Michael Thomas, and on top of that, again, Junior in this red zone, it's just going to help this Bears defense focus on all these players because right now the Saints like to spread the ball down in that red zone. But for me, primarily, my eyes are going to be on Thomas. But what about you, B? Anyone you're watching down there?
I always like just kind of keep an eye on the tight ends because they can provide some mismatches against linebackers because they're sometimes a little taller, sometimes a little wider. But Kobe Fleener only has 13 receptions on the year. So I don't want to say he's a big target, but that's just something that I always watch for. And then the running backs too, because if they line up out of the backfield and come as receivers from out of the backfield, are they going to be accounted for? I think they are. But when you get down there in the red zone, it's just so constricted, like you said. Not always everyone gets picked up, unfortunately. But I think the Bears do a pretty good job of knowing who their man is and sticking to him. So the running backs and the tight ends primarily because you touched on Michael Thomas. Sure. But just those are going to be 2 spots that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, and that's how the Saints get a ton of their points, just how effective they are in the red zone and getting down there. But I do think this Bears defense, especially as of late, has just been pretty lights out in the red zone as well, forcing opponents to kick field goals, which again, if the Bears can do that, force the Saints to settle for field goals, especially down the red zone, that's huge for the outcome of this game because it keeps the game lower scoring. If you can hold them to 3 instead of 7, that's a 4-point difference each and every time. So for Chicago's offense, who does struggle with, putting up points in bunches, it's going to be imperative for the Bears to shut down New Orleans in their red zone for sure. So Brandon, we did an X factor on offense. So let's do one on defense today too. I'm curious, who do you got?
I have Akeem Hicks, just because I was surprised that he was still fired up about being traded out of New Orleans. So I think he's going to show the New Orleans front office that he's more than happy to be tearing it up here in Chicago. But if he gets too over-aggressive, that could hurt us in the run game by not staying in his gap. So stay disciplined, just like I said with the offense. Just play smart, play fundamental, and go do your thing. I think this defense is set up. I don't want to say to have a big day, but they will hold this offense. I think they'll surprise some people.
That's exactly where I'm at too, right? Not a big day, not one of those wow games, but a game where maybe it's wow when you see how the Bears hopefully are able to hold the Saints to respectable numbers that are below their season average. Honestly, that's a victory in my book. But for me, my X factor, Danny Trevathan, I talked about it earlier, just how important he's going to be, not just stopping this running game for the Saints have, but also the 2 backs coming out of the backfield. Also maybe Kobe Fleener at times, but Fleener I'm not worried about really at all. But for me, Danny Trevathan, getting everybody on the same page, getting everybody fired up, because that's what he does, especially in a hostile environment on the road. It's going to be huge for him to show up in a big way this game, lead by example like he has been, play with some charge, get some energy, spark this defense. And if he does that, I just expect wonders again from this front 7 to do what they have been doing and stick with it. So for me, Danny Trevathan is going to be my X factor on defense, because if he struggles to do any of that, I think this entire defense struggles. Just like the Minnesota game when he was out and the defense just fell apart, Danny Trevathan needs to continue doing what he's doing, lead by example, and just be the heart and soul of the Chicago Bears defense. But Brandon, that's everything in my notes regarding this Bears defense and the Saints offense. Anything else that you want to discuss before I move on?
Do you think we'll see any corner blitzes this week? I don't think we've seen it in a few weeks.
I think that'll depend, of course. I mean, that's an easy answer if I just say it depends on the situation.
On the game plan. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's a cop-out answer. I think maybe. I think Vic Fangio is going to try to, get some extra pressure on Brees. Maybe Callahan coming in off his, his blind side, and especially because right now, the two primary focuses are on the outside corners, and Mukamara, Fuller have that down. Callahan has a little bit of leeway in that nickel position, so I think he can definitely come in and maybe make his impact. But that said, I said that was everything in my notes, but I lied. I do have one more thing I wanted to mention, and that is I'm excited to watch the Saints on third down because this is another big-time matchup. Over the past 3 weeks, Chicago has the 6th best defense on third down. That's right. They're only allowing opponents to convert on 31% of those third down conversions, and New Orleans enters the game converting on 40% this season. But they do move the chains. They did last week over 50% on their third downs. So if Chicago could hold New Orleans less to their average, less than 40%, and like I mentioned earlier, if Chicago's offense can find the way to improve their third down offense, it just is going to make for a great formula. It's going to keep New Orleans 4th highest scoring offense off that field. And obviously they can't score if they're sitting on the sidelines. And especially on the road, this helps us take the wind out of the sails of the crowd, getting that offense off the field. And I just can't express how big third downs on both sides of the ball is going to be this week for the Bears. But if they can keep New Orleans, obviously getting every team off on third down is the goal. But New Orleans, 40%, it could be a little bit worse. I think the Bears can definitely get them to the less than 40% range, which, again, would be huge for the outcome of this game. So, Brandon, it's time to figure out who has the edge, and I will give you the Bears' run defense versus the Saints' rushing attack. I think that's a pretty big matchup.
I think it is, too, and I think the Bears' run defense actually comes away with it. I think they do put a re-emphasis on stopping the run game because this is a top 10 rushing offense, and they want to put their foot in the ground and say, no, we're going to be the better squad out here in this one. And I think that the run defense ends up keeping Ingram and Kamara in check.
I like it. I'm going to give myself the Bears secondary versus the Saints passing attack. And I'm going to give an unpopular opinion. I'm going to say the Saints passing attack has the edge. They have Drew Brees. They have Ted Ginn Jr. They have, Thomas as well on the outside. And of course, these running backs are the second and third leading receivers, and they're both coming out of the backfield. Plenty of options for Brees to play with. His offensive line has been playing well so far this season. But that said, this is the game where the Bears can definitely prove me wrong. They can go out there. The secondary can continue to play lights out, show this NFL, show the world that they're a secondary to be reckoned with. And if they can do that this week against the Saints, I don't think neither of us will ever give the other team's passing attack the edge. This is a big week for that secondary. As of right now, I'm going to give that edge to the Saints passing attack, but I'm not going to downplay just how well the secondary has played. I just want to see him show up in this game, and then I'm going to be sold on him 110%. So, Brandon, one final edge to give, and it's going to be the Bears' pass rush versus that Saints offensive line that's only given up 5 sacks all season.
Yeah, between this one and the Bears secondary versus the Saints pass rush, I think I was flipping coins on this one. But I'm going to give it to the Bears pass rush. I think that they get their close to their average of sacks. I think we'll get 2-3 in this game. I think Drew Brees goes down more than once. This is a stout Saints offensive line, but I think this pass rush is just talented enough to be able to find some way to get in there.
All right, I'm curious. Akeem Hicks going up against his former team and going up against a backup right guard. How much does that sway into that decision?
Significantly, I think. I just think he's ready to show his team that, hey, this is what you got rid of.
Yeah, I like that, especially in their dome at their place, a crowd that he's played in front of before. It's just Akeem Hicks is gonna play with some serious swag, and I can't wait to see him out there doing it. But that is it for both sides of the ball. So we just have a few more things to do, and we're going to start off by handing out some bold predictions. So, Brandon, what's your bold prediction?
I think the Bears special teams jumps in on this contagious playmaking that they've seen from the defense, and I think we see 2 punt returns for touchdowns.
Who's returning it, Jackson or Cohen?
Can we give one to each?
You could.
I think so. I think we might see that reverse that we've seen a couple weeks ago.
Oh, I like that. Okay, that'd be neat. I would definitely like to see them spark it up on special teams. Yep. For me, I was thinking along the same lines, but I'm giving this defense a 3rd straight game with a touchdown. The safeties have done it. Now it's time for someone else to step up and do it as well. Heck, maybe a strip sack and an Akeem Hicks recovery for a touchdown. That might be pretty cool to see against his former team, but that's extremely bold, and I don't.
Yes, it is.
And I am not.
Can we take that a step bolder and say it's going to be an Akeem Hicks interception?
Oh, yeah, that would be pretty nice, wouldn't it?
It would.
All right. So let's go around the horn now. And by around the horn, I guess it's just back and forth today. But let's predict the MVP, and I'll start. Mine is a name that we've mentioned all show long, Akeem Hicks. I mean, going up against his former team, against that backup guard who's been asked to play multiple positions. Hicks is just going to be playing with fire. He's going to be playing with passion. And we just know all too well in Chicago how moving a lineman can really affect our rhythm and really everything that goes along with it. So I think Akeem Hicks definitely has an edge. I know the Saints are going to be keying in on him as well, but I think he just has too much, as Stacey King, the Bulls announcer, say, heart, hustle, and muscle in this one to definitely not have his impact mitigated. He's going to go out there and make it felt. How about you, Brandon? Who's your MVP?
I'm going to give it to Prince Amukamara. I mean, he's faced some criticism early in his time here being injured, saying that, he's not necessarily consistent with his playing time. And I think this week he kind of silences those critics just a little bit more. The last couple weeks he's been pretty much shut down. He caused the interception last week. I think he silences these critics just a little bit more.
I like that. Prince Amukamara, if he ends up being the MVP, the Bears win. There's no question about it. Oh, yeah. At the end of the game, Prince Amukamara is the best player we've had. Honestly, I don't see how the Bears can be on the losing side of the outcome. But speaking of losing sides and outcomes, let's predict the game. And speaking of losing sides, let's talk about the records here because I have an abysmal 0-7 record. I do want to mention that these past couple weeks, I'm going against the Bears purposefully because they are 3-0 and I pick against them now. And honestly, it's been a magic formula and I love it. And me being in the very bottom here of the standings is just a small sacrifice I can take for a Bears victory. But Nick, he's in second with 2-5. And Brandon, you're 3-4. You're still on top. So you want to go first or last?
I'll go first again this week. I think this game is very huge for the Bears season. And I think that with a chance to go 500 before the bye week in a noisy environment, I don't think they shy away from it. I think they take this head on. And I feel some confidence around this team. I know I'm definitely hopefully throwing off that confident vibe as we've gone throughout the whole show. And I think the Bears are going to win this one 24-18 in New Orleans.
24-18 in New Orleans. I like that. It's almost another bold prediction from you. Nick, you picked the Bears, and if I'm not mistaken, I know he sent me the score this morning. Was it 23-20? I think that sounds right.
Yes.
All right. Nick has the Bears winning 23-20, which brings up the bottom of the barrel, and that's me. I'm giving the Saints the victory, 24-14. And yes, I'm picking them because I really hope the Bears move to 4-0 when I pick against the Bears. So Saints win 24-14. You heard it from me. But that said, Brandon, before we kind of go through the rest of the final things we need to hit on before the show ends, I have one question. You and me, we're both very optimistic heading into this game, and we've been doing the show for a few years, and it seems like this is the point where we get let down every single time. And I'm not trying to bring it up and be a downer, but I'm just asking, are you optimistic fully, or are you holding like a little wall up? Like, please don't hurt me again, because it's been so many times like, fool me once, shame on you. And I'm slightly nervous that we're going to be let down, but it is a tough New Orleans team at that.
It is a tough New Orleans team. And I think this is something that we kind of talked about on the way up to the Carolina game was, it's not one that we necessarily expect to win. I think we're optimistic that they do, but even like you said, if we go 3-5 going into the bye week, like, I think we've turned some heads. This is a squad that started to turn it around, show some talent, show some confidence in themselves, which is great to see. And there's no reason to not feel optimistic when the team feels that way. So I think 500 is definitely reasonable, especially with a tough challenge. I think they take it head on, and I don't think they go down without a fight. So I don't know if that means I'm overly optimistic or not, but at the same time, if it's a loss,
depends how it goes.
They've still shown what they can do, and I still have faith for the second half of the season.
All right, that's fair. That's all fair. I wanted to bring it up because I just feel like this is exactly how I feel every time. But I do feel like at the same time, when you think about it, things are a little bit different. We haven't seen a defense like we've had. We haven't seen the fun, the attitude, just the overall team atmosphere in Chicago like this in quite a long time. So I'm hoping this is that turning point for this team. I really do. I know everyone watching does as well. So hopefully that's the case. And of course, before we head off, I want to make sure to let you know, we would love if you would leave a comment with your bold prediction, the most valuable Bear, and of course, what you think the outcome of this game is going to be. Spark a discussion. Let us know. We love hearing from you and seeing what you're thinking coming into each and every week. But that's really it for this game preview. Brandon, any final thoughts?
I think I've touched on all my thoughts in this one.
That's fair. I mean, sometimes everything just escapes, and you've said all you can, which I'm kind of in the same boat as well. I just want to reiterate one fact, and that is just how big this game is for the Bears.
Yep.
Even if they lose, and if it's a close, hard-fought game, it's going to be huge for this team heading into the second week of the year. But if they can find a way, go 4-4, entering this bye week with a week to prepare for the next game. And on top of that, a very friendly schedule for the second half of the season. It's going to get interesting, folks, and I hope you stick around for it with us because we're going to be here every step of the way, and we wouldn't have it any other way. But before we sign off, I just want to let you know that we did pick a T-shirt winner on Monday. I emailed that person. I'm not going to say what email to keep their privacy, intact. So please check your inbox. I want to give away this free T-shirt, and if we don't hear back by next Monday, we're going to have to pick another winner. So if you entered yourself for that free T-shirt giveaway, please check your inbox. I would love to hear back from you. Get your shipping info and can get that sent your way. And on top of that, just keep your reviews coming. We are now only 10 away from 100. And like I said, you're generous to us. You give us your time, and we want to return the favor. And we're going to be doing something real special once we reach that 100 review mark. And I think once we hit 100 reviews, I don't have to ask for quite some time. So help us out. Let's get to that 100. It just takes a few minutes. And if you do, make sure you put your Twitter handle if you have one. That way you can be entered for our weekly Pro Football Focus Edge subscription giveaway. So there are plenty of benefits for leaving a review, some for you and, of course, some for us, because when you give us a review, more Bears fans are likely to find the show, give us a listen, and we can just grow the Bears Brothers community worldwide, which has just been fun to watch this audience grow all season long. But that's going to do it for this episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Bears Brothers podcast. Up next is going to be my 5 matchups and 3 keys to victory on Sunday. You'll find out exactly what they are soon, but until then, bear down, Chicago.